Welcome to the Wisdom Words Podcast with Pastors Dale and Joel Evrist. This podcast draws wisdom from the Word to engage the questions of today.
Welcome, everybody. For those who are new with us, my name is Joel, and I'm here with my dad, Pastor Dale, a.k.a. PD. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Welcome back, everyone.
On this episode of the Wisdom Words Podcast, we're going to get more into a specific journey of discovery called courtship. You're going to want to make sure that you listen to the couple of episodes before this because we cover a lot when it comes to the guarded heart life, journeys of discovery, multitude of counsel, how to prepare for marriage. We're going to get into some more specifics today, talking about what is courtship? How do I get into a courtship? What does that process look like? So we're going to start with this idea of a marriageable age and stage. A courtship is a specific journey of discovery with two people who are of a marriageable age and stage. So we talked about that a couple of episodes ago, but let's cover it a little more in detail here. PD, when we talk about a marriageable age and stage, spiritual readiness, emotional readiness, financial readiness, what are we talking about? What are we not talking about?
Well, you don't want to enter into anything until you're ready. It wouldn't make sense for you to start doing a residency at a hospital in your first year of medical school. There's a process you have to go through, and there is a place that you have to get to, a process you have to go through, and a place you have to get to before you're ready for anything. You're not saying that you're a seasoned doctor. You don't want to start practicing law. It'd be illegal too, until you have gone through law school and passed the bar exam. Doesn't mean you're a seasoned attorney. You're just beginning, but at least you're ready to start. So we're not talking about you being a perfect person before you're married, because you're never going to be a perfect person, number one. And part of what ongoingly perfects or matures you is being married. But there's some baseline things that need to be in place before you enter into a courtship, because what you're saying in entering into a courtship is, I am of a marriageable age, and I want to investigate the possibility of this person being someone that I could be married to. Now, let me hasten to say, you need the cooperation of the other person. So it can't just be you going, hey, I want to be in a courtship with you. Both people have to say, yeah, we're identifying there's an attraction here, and we'd like to enter into this. But three main things. Number one, you need to be spiritually mature enough to be married. That means you're strong in the faith. Number two, you need to be emotionally mature enough to be married. That means you are stable emotionally. Doesn't mean that you're not carrying, some level of woundedness or things you've gone through. You don't have to be, some person that has, no emotional challenges whatsoever. What you can't be is emotionally unstable. That's not fair to anyone, and certainly not someone you're going to be married to. And then the third thing is you need to be financially independent enough. And that just means you're solvent. It means that, you're not in deep debt, and you make enough money to pay the rent, put food on the table, and pay your tithe and give whatever offerings you can. Doesn't mean you're going out to a fancy dinner every Friday night. Doesn't mean you're ready to buy a house. You might be in that place, but you're able to live on your own without being supported by your parents. Now, let me hasten to say, when you're first married, for most people, thank God for parents. They're coming through with meals. They're coming, hey, we'll take you out. When my wife and I first got married, we had barely enough money to pay rent, pay for food, pay our tithe. And man, my mom and dad and my in-laws, they were champs. They just came through they were so generous with us, but what they didn't do, they didn't pay our bills. We paid our own bills. So spiritually mature enough, you're strong in the faith. Emotionally mature enough, you're stable emotionally. And financially independent enough, you're solvent and able to function as an adult person taking care of your financial responsibilities.
So some of you might be listening, asking, well, how do I get to a marriageable age and stage? How do I get spiritually, emotionally, financially ready? Go back and listen to our last episode, because basically the shorter answer is get discipled. Get discipled. Be like who you want to be like until you're like them. Find mature men and women of God who are in the season you want to be in, and get discipled and mentored and coached to become spiritually, emotionally, and financially ready. Okay, that leads to another question. What is a courtship? At least the way that we're defining it. What is a courtship? What does a courtship look like? So we're just going to give a few kind of highlights of what a courtship looks like. There's obviously more detail to this, and keep in mind that courtship is customizable. It depends on the couple. It depends on their age. It depends on their stage. It depends on their geography. It depends on their particular needs. So this is not a one size fits all. This is a process that can ebb and flow based on the people who are involved. But here are some basics. Okay, first and foremost, we've got two friends, all right, a man and a woman, who are of a marriageable age and stage. PD just talked about that. Two friends who are of a marriageable age and stage. Now, these two friends are strongly attracted to one another. We're not just talking about, hey, I like the way your hair looks. I like, that you play guitar or whatever. We're talking about an attraction to the deepest, realest part of who this person is in Christ. I am strongly attracted to this person. And listen, I'm strongly enough attracted to this person, or I'm attracted to this person strongly enough that I have a sense this might be the person chosen by God for me to marry. Okay. Third thing is, in a courtship, you're spending a lot of time together, getting to know each other in a very, very intentional way. In a dating relationship, you're doing a lot of hanging out. We're going here, we're going there. We might talk about each other's background. We might talk about each other's testimony. We might talk about each other's families. We might talk about each other's futures and what we're sensing for the future. We might not. In a courtship, it is very intentional in how you're getting to know each other and discovering God's will for each other. You're not just spending time together with each other's families and spending time together with each other's friends and each other's church communities. You're spending time with just each other, taking walks, getting coffee, having meals, having deep discussions with one another about who you are, your background, and who you feel like God has called you to be. And in those times, you're discovering whether or not God is calling you to be married. Listen, here's a very simple thing to remember. What's the big question we're trying to answer in a courtship? Is this the person God is calling me to marry? That's the big question we're trying to discover. Is it a no? Is it a yes? You're also in a courtship having a lot of fun. It is a super enjoyable process with family and friends and community and with each other. You're going to be having a lot of fun. And lastly, a courtship is in community. That's one of the main distinctions between your kind of run-of-the-mill dating relationship and a courtship, is that we are doing this in community. Now, I'm going to ask PD a question here in just a moment, but a lot of people ask about the length of a courtship. Well, how long is it? I don't like when people give this answer, but it's the only suitable answer. It depends. It depends on the couple. It depends on their age. It depends on their stage. Sometimes a couple in a courtship, man, they have known each other for a long time. They have a super strong friendship and they've known each other for a long time. Their courtship might last 3 to 4 months because it's so intentional in how they're getting to know each other. Might last a little bit longer than that. It depends on the couple. But I can tell you this, We're not talking about 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year courtships, like a lot of dating relationships can be. Why? Because this couple has waited until they're of a marriageable age and stage. They've got a friendship, and they're being very intentional in getting to know each other and being mentored and coached by some mature, godly men and women. One of the things that's not in a courtship is romance, because we said this is between two friends. So, Petey, help us with that piece. Why are we delaying romance in a courtship? Why aren't we holding hands, cuddling, kissing, sweet notes of love, and just taking Valentine's Day to the nines? Why are we delaying romance in a courtship? Give us some reasons for that.
Yeah, and there are some very good reasons for that. Again, part of it is delaying that gratification so that you can grow by God's grace in discerning whether or not this person really is the one you're to marry. Because the moment you introduce romance, the scripture tells us that romance is very intoxicating, and it needs to be. It's euphoric, and it's one of the most beautiful things when it's time. Song of Solomon says, "Do not awaken love before it's time," which doesn't simply mean don't awaken sexual intimacy, don't engage in sexual intimacy before it's time, but it also means to not put things out of place. Rather, they need to be in their proper place. And so romance is a gift from God to those who are married or about to be married. When I just want to just say something parenthetically here too. Some people bristle at the language of courtship. It's like, that sounds old and really, here's a definition. Courtship is a more traditional, focused process of getting to know someone with the goal of potentially marrying them, while dating is a broader, more casual exploration of potential romantic interest.
Strong.
So it really is, dating is much more unfocused, it's much more undisciplined, and it's much more unfruitful, where a courtship is much more about, hey, I am of a marriageable age, and I'm seeing this person, again, rather than saying, I'm just going to find somebody I like the way they look and who knows the Lord and marry them. I'm saying to the Lord, I want you to pick.
It's good.
I want you to pick. And this is somebody I feel really drawn to, and I found out they feel drawn to me. So let's engage in this intentional process, and you're not. It's not lifeless. It's not sterile. As a matter of fact, it's actually developing that which long-term marriages are built on, and that is companionship and friendship and partnership. So romance is beautiful and it's wonderful in its place. It's like if I go out of my house and look in our beds, there is soil and that's beautiful and rich. It's been amended and there's things just growing out of it. But if I take that same soil and bring it into our house and spread it all over the carpet, now suddenly it's not a beautiful thing because it's out of place. It doesn't belong there. Romance belongs to those who are about to get married or have been married. It's euphoric. It is wonderful. It actually is the kind of stuff that brings young couples together. Way back in the day, it was one of the things that really brought couples together very, very often unto conceiving children. Well, there's no mandate that you have to get married and have kids right away. But romance is something that is a beautiful thing between a couple about to be married or married, if you introduce it too soon, it causes your thinking to become disoriented and skewed. And now all you can think about is the romance and not about the real process of discovery, which courtship is.
We're delaying romance for a couple of reasons, and Pastor Dale already touched on this. First of all, we're trying to hear from God during this process. And you want to know what's powerful? Hand-holding. And it's supposed to be. I've been married for 15 years, and I can tell you when I hold my wife's hand, it has the same effect today as it had after we got engaged. It links me to her. It is sweet and wonderful and powerful because it's supposed to be kissing and cuddling. All those non-sexual affections are incredibly powerful because they're supposed to be. They're supposed to protect marriages from adultery, from casting longing eyes on each other. One of my favorite things in the Bible is the longest chapter on adultery in the Bible is Proverbs chapter 5. And right in the middle of it is explicit romantic and sexual affection. You want to fight against the draw of the strange and immoral woman, Proverbs says, then be romantic with your woman. Be romantic with your man. So romance is powerful. And when you're trying to hear from God with your friend and you start holding her hand and you start caressing her hair and you start cuddling with her, that clouds the process. It's just all of a sudden now she's so into you and you're so into her. And it's harder to determine, listen very closely to this, whether or not I feel at home with this person, no matter what we're doing. Whether we're just riding in the car, whether we're just taking a walk, whether we're having fun or with family, do I feel at home with this person? Delaying romance helps you to discover whether or not that's God. And I'll tell you something, if you discover that God is not calling you to be married, then you walk away from that courtship with no regrets because you haven't been kissing each other and holding hands and all that kind of stuff. We want to hear from God as friends because when we do, then we know for the rest of our lives, I know that I know that I know I heard from God. And then once you've made a covenant with somebody, then that romance gets to be introduced, and it's so exciting. I love what it says here. PD quoted it, Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 7. I charge you, daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, don't stir up or awaken romantic love until it's time. And when is it time? When a covenant has been made, when a ring has been put on the finger, and a covenant has been made that two people are going to spend the rest of their lives together. So that's obviously going to raise a lot of questions, and we'll be able to answer those questions more in specific examples as people are walking into those courtships. Okay, another question, PD. If a courtship is going to work out, proper alignment has to be a conviction. Knowing those over you in leadership, next to you in partnership, under you in stewardship, but especially those over you in leadership. A willingness to have good and godly married men and women speak into your courtship process is a must. Why, when it comes to pursuing someone you're interested in, why do people tend to throw out conventional wisdom? They seek counsel here, they get advice here, they get guidance here. But man, when I'm trying to pursue that girl I like or that guy I like, it's like, everybody leave me alone and nobody speak into this because it's intrusive. Why does that happen? And why is godly leadership so important for courtship?
Well, part of the reason people do that is because they're taking their cues from the culture around them rather than the Spirit of God within them and the Word of God in front of them. Because the culture around them, this is my private world, my private romance, this is our relationship. And sometimes young people will say, it just feels intrusive when other people are talking about speaking into, and you're like, well, Have you been to college? Yeah. Did you find your professors and your instructors intrusive as they were trying to teach you about things you didn't yet know? Well, no. Were you in athletics? Yeah. Was your coach intrusive when he was trying to teach you how to play the game and how to be successful? No. You wouldn't say to a real estate agent, "Hey, we're going to buy the house. We don't need your input on this. There's nothing in life where you engage in a significant decision-making process where you don't include experts, where you don't include proven people who know what they're talking about and people who care about you and want what is best for you." And one of the things that we teach in our church as we train our courtship couples, as we call them, is to deal with the people that you're dealing with and tailor what you say and what you do to who they are and how they're put together. And so having people involved in this process is not restrictive or binding. It is freeing and resourceful, where it gives you the kind of input and information and even inspiration that you need to be able to walk through a process successfully. It is another step in the disciple-making process. So if someone you said, "I want to be discipled," you wouldn't say, "But leave me alone. I'll disciple myself. I'll do this totally on my own." You would think, "Man, I need somebody who knows more than me to help me know how to better follow Jesus." Courtship is very much part of the disciple-making process as we're working with people who are saying, "Can you help us in this journey of discovery to really come to find out or to try and find out whether or not we're right for each other." Let me just say one other thing on that. Nobody is telling you this person is right for you, this person's not right for you. Nobody is saying, because, we got to explode these myths. Courtship is about arranged marriages. Courtship is about telling people who they can marry and who they can't marry. Utterly and totally ridiculous. I mean, I don't know who the people are out there that try to control other people's lives. It sounds exhausting to me. Right. The last thing in the world we want to do is control anybody's life. We are trying to aid and assist people in discovering who God's choice for them is. But please, of all things, don't make the finding of a husband or a wife the one thing where you crowd good and godly counsel out.
That's so important. I don't get it. I mean, I do get it. I understand that it's emotion that does it, but people are seeking counsel all over the place. Help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. Then we get into pursuing some kind of romantic exclusive relationship, and it's like, we got this. And again, how is that, and we talked about this in our last episode, how is that going to help you should you get married? How's that going to help you as a Christian couple, as a Christian married couple, that you started your relationship off on a exclusive foot? Hey, we don't need anybody. Well, that's not going to work out in marriage. I just, one of the things I thought that was so important, I'll say it here in just a moment. First, we just want to take a minute and thank you for joining us today. We'd love for you to subscribe to the Wisdom Words podcast if you haven't already. If you'd like to support this ministry, you can head to lifereachresources.com or newsongnashville.com and click the Give tab. Your support means the world to us. It helps us bring Bible-based content to folks all over the world. Thank you so much. So a thought here is if someone's going to do a courtship process, it's they have to choose to.
Right.
Nobody's going to be pressured into this process. You have to choose it. I oftentimes tell young people, the easiest way to receive direction is to ask for it. Because when you ask for it and then someone gives you direction, you're not like, hey, what do you back off? I'm trying to do my thing. No, if you really want counsel and direction, you need to ask for it. When my phone tries to help me and I have not asked for Siri's help, it makes me so mad. If I want Siri to give me directions somewhere, I have to punch that in. Well, that's the only way courtship is going to work. You said this. You asked this question, or you posed this question, PD. Can you help us? That's how courtship is going to work under leadership, is if the man and the woman who are interested in each other, they're going to leaders and saying, can you help us? Because if you're asking for direction, then when you receive it, it's such a joy. It's such a blessing. I love when Siri gets me where I'm wanting to go and she helps me get there. It's just when she talks to me and I'm not asking, I get super frustrated. So that really helps, that this is a process you choose and you're asking for that help. Let me ask this question, PD. With a courtship, some courtships end in being friends. They don't end in engagement. So if a courtship ends in remaining friends, is that a failure or is that a success?
Yeah, no, that's a success. You walked through a process. You kept each other pure. You kept yourselves physically pure. You kept yourselves emotionally pure. And you just came to realize, this is not it. There may be a little disappointment. There typically is not heartbreak and heartache. You haven't gotten somebody almost to the altar and then called it off. And we have examples in our church now, after having engaged in this process for 30 years. I just want to emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, this is not theory to us. We have 3 decades of experience in this, and during that time, we've had courtships end where people are realizing this is not the Lord, and I can you wouldn't know the names of these people, most of you, but I can think of names and faces right now of people who are in beautiful marriages. Just one quick story. This didn't turn into a full-blown courtship, but there was a man years ago that was interested in our eldest daughter and wanted to enter into a courtship. She didn't feel the same way. And so, as I said before, both people have to feel the same way. Well, he wound up a little while later entering into a courtship with another young lady, our daughter, with her now husband of almost 20 years. And those two couples became the closest of friends and just shared their lives together. We have had people who've been in courtships that have not ended in marriage, and then they've gone on to meet other people and been married. They're all still in the church. Nobody's mad at each other. And, I remember one young man, one of our fine young leaders in the church, when the courtship that he was in ended, it did hurt him, but it wasn't because something bad was done. It just kind of reinforced in his mind some things that really weren't true, but he just kind of felt like, I guess I just don't measure up. And we were able, because we were involved, we were able to help him to say, this doesn't have anything to do with you not measuring up. This just has to do with this situation not adding up. And then he winds up in a courtship with another wonderful young lady. They've been married for numbers of years, have 2 beautiful children, and he's one of the finest young leaders in our church. All of this, just so you hear us saying this to you, We're talking about people here. Mm-hmm. This is a handle with care process.
Right.
This is not sloppy. This is not haphazard in any way. This is not, there's no matchmaking involved in this. Mm-hmm. There's no arrangement involved in this. And we really try to keep out all kinds of silliness, because no matter how hard we try, there are still those people who want to try to, they do it unintentionally, but they try to pull it down into the stuff of going to the prom rather than being in a courtship. We fight very, very hard for the sanctity of this process. We're talking about people's futures. We're talking about their lives together. And one of the things that we've seen, and Joel was talking about this earlier, we don't have a set time with the courtship, but because it's intentional, and because it is, and because it's very thorough, typically in 3 to 4 months, the people who are in a courtship, have discovered whether or not there's something here or not. So be assured that everything about courtship for us, and it should be for anyone, it pulses with the life of the Holy Spirit. And that's what makes it very enjoyable. And even for those rare times, and it is one of the reasons that courtship's coming to an end for us and not ending in marriage are rare, is people are pretty careful on the front end that they're really identifying, I'm very drawn to this person. But occasionally it does happen. But in it, again, nobody gets shattered. And nobody gets soured on the process. And we will say, after 30 years, it is so rare that we have somebody say, I didn't care for the courtship process that got married. It's almost negligible. I would say 99.5% of people who've ever gone through this are like, I wouldn't want to do it any other way. And I'm going to preach this to our kids when they get to this age, that they don't do it any other way.
Yeah, the two words that I've heard more than any other two words of people who've gone through the courtship process are worth it.
Yeah.
Worth it. It's just, and I love the examples that you were giving of like a really good coach that helps some athletes get to where they can never get on their own. No one's forcing those athletes to do anything. They're getting covering and help from the coach. I love what you said about the realtor. And you get a really good realtor partnering with you, and they're helping you to discover options and places to go, and they're helping you on your journey to find the home you sense from the Lord that He's giving you. Nobody's forcing anybody to do anything. Nobody's coercing anybody or browbeating anybody to do anything. It's all about coming alongside somebody to help them discover God's plan for their life. And I know for a lot of young people out there, they're like, give me some of that. I don't want to do this on my own. And, with the dating thing, man, how many times it doesn't always happen, but how many times do we see exes hate each other? I don't ever want to see this girl again. I don't want to see this guy again. There's so much regret, so much animosity versus some of those stories you were telling. I think of a story very similar to that when I was our youth pastor. We had some leaders on youth leadership team. And as they walked through this process as friends, they just didn't feel at home. They respected each other and loved each other as a brother and sister in Christ, but they didn't feel at home. That courtship ended as friends. They continued to be friends. Not only did they not hate each other, they loved each other. When they both went into different courtships with some others who now they're married to, I remember then all four of them were on youth leadership team together. And working together, loving each other, friends to this day, in each other's weddings. I'm like, that's a more excellent way, where not only did a courtship end, and it didn't end in engagement, but it also didn't end in hatred. It ended in perpetual friendship and joy. So thankful for that. Okay, one last question, and this is a big one for a lot of people that are listening. What if a church doesn't believe in the practice of courtship? Or what if they do, like they like the thought of it, but it is a dating culture, which is most church cultures. It's a dating culture. Hey, go figure it out. Find someone you like. Don't commit immorality. Love Jesus. And hey, if you put a ring on it, come and talk to us. We'll help you with premarital counseling. But until that point, we don't really want to be involved. What if someone has a culture like that, or this is new for them? They feel a call to this, but it's not as baked into their culture as it is to ours. What are some steps people can take to get some leadership in their life? Walk through a process like this. Can you help those listeners out there that are going, man, I want this. I just don't know how to start because this is new to me.
Yeah, well, one of the things I would say to you is if you are in a Bible-believing, Jesus-honoring, gospel-preaching, Spirit-filled and led church, you need to stay there. You're in a good situation. But if that church that fits that particular profile doesn't have a category for courtship, but you've heard this podcast and you're like, I'm in, I will guarantee a couple of things to you. Number one, there is at least one couple, if not more, in your church that would be willing to be involved in your life and help you walk through a process like this. And number two, we would be happy to help train and coach people who would want to be involved in your life. Now, in our church, we've taken people from other churches through courtship as they've asked and gotten, permission from their leaders. That's not ideal. And as this podcast goes out to lots and lots of people, obviously we wouldn't be able to keep up with the demand. That's why I say to you, God would not put this desire, this very godly desire in your heart if he didn't have people in your community that would be willing to help. And I can't imagine, you might not have a church that has a culture of courtship, but I can't imagine that you would have a pastor or leaders who would be anti-thorough biblical process leading to marriage. So ask the Lord to show you who that couple is, who those couples are, and go to them and say, hey, would you help us? And we know of a church that's got information on this. We've seen that happen, and then we've seen churches that then have said, "Wow, this was really, really good." Now, I will say the number one reason that people don't tend to engage this process as leaders is they think it takes up too much time.
Right.
And they either don't feel like they have the time or they don't feel like the time is necessary. Okay, that's mostly just an education issue where you just become, oh, wow. It's kind of like people who have kids and they haven't really, Jesus was always talking about calculating the cost. And you've got to count the cost of following Jesus. You got to count the cost of being a husband or a wife. You have to count the cost of being a parent. There's a cost involved if you're going to do anything with excellence. But if you can become Exhibit A, you can go through this and you can become an evangelist about courtship. You can be, hey, I got good news. There's a way to walk this thing through. We walked it through. And so this undoubtedly would be a beloved couple in your church. They walked us through it. It was amazing. So count on the fact that if this is something that you want to do, God has the people in place to help you to do it.
It's excellent counsel. And, as we start to bring this here to a close, I just want to encourage those that are listening, some that are listening, especially who might be younger. You've had a lot of boyfriends and girlfriends in your past, or you've had some challenging moments, and you don't want to keep replicating that. we just want to encourage you, you don't have to. You don't have to. There can be a more pure and powerful and peaceful and enjoyable process of being covered by some godly men and women to help you discover who God has called you to marry. Some others of you don't have any past of boyfriends or girlfriends or things like that. And this process is obviously just as much for you as well. Just a little bit about my story. I knew my wife, Lauren, for 6 years before we entered into a courtship. And why did we wait that long? Because we weren't of a marriageable age and stage. What were we doing during that time? Building a foundation of intimacy with Jesus Christ upon which we are building the rest of our lives. We weren't waiting and doing nothing. Like we talked about in our last podcast, we were waiting and working and worshiping. We were getting discipled and trained on how to follow Jesus. And so when people would ask me, Joel, you dating anybody? People that I knew around the city and around the nation, you dating anybody? I would say, no, I'm waiting for my wife. I'm waiting for that season when I'm ready for marriage. And I know that when that season comes, the Lord will reveal who that needs to be. No one has ever made fun of me for that because it plays your heartstrings. Like I'm tempted to play a little guitar solo with my mouth right now. I'm not going to do it, but it plays your heartstrings. You hear that someone's waiting for their wife, for the person God has for them. They hear that, it resonates with them. And then when you're of a marriageable age and stage, and you tell people, not in a mean way, not in an uppity way, but in a kind way, I'm not interested in a girlfriend. I'm interested in finding my wife. Whoo, people hear that and they go, good for you, bro. Good for you. So to everyone out there, whether you're younger or you're a little bit older or you're trying to raise your kids in this, whoever you are, this is worth waiting for. I oftentimes will ask our couples who've gone through courtship, whether it ends in friendship, which as PD said is very rare, oftentimes it ends in engagement. When we're at that engagement party, I go up to both of them separately and I just say, tell me, be honest with me, be frank. Worth it, not worth it. And they're just like, this was so worth it. No regrets. And that's another thing we're trying to get to, folks, is we're trying to get to wedding days with no regrets, where a bride is walking down that aisle with no regrets. She's only got one guy in her heart, and it's the guy she's walking toward at the front of that procession. A groom that has no regrets in his heart. He's only got one gal in his heart, and a whole community that's surrounding them that help them get to that point, and not just get to that point. Because you know this, PD, you talk about this all the time, seasons as finish lines and starting lines. Not just to get to your wedding day, but that's now a starting line to a brand new season, and it's a brand new season where you're surrounded by the people who helped you get there. So this process is so worth it. Any just quick final exhortations before we wrap this podcast?
Keep in mind, as we said from the very beginning of Wisdom Words and talking about this particular subject, this is all about more and healthier marriages. That's what we are committed to. We'll work with anybody, but we don't want to see people unhappy and unfruitful. We want to see people happily married and loving the partnership, the friendship, and the comradeship that they have together in this most unique human relationship, the only exclusive human relationship that we have. It's too important to not get it right. Please don't spend more time trying to figure out how to build a house than you do how to build a life. This is the most important relational decision after your relationship with Jesus you'll ever make. Get with some people who want to help and let them help you find your way to God's will in this most important issue.
We hope this has been helpful for you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our new episodes. If you'd like to support our ministry, head to lifereachresources.com or newsongnashville.com and click the Give tab to help us continue to bring Bible-based content to you and others around the world. Join us next time here on the Wisdom Words Podcast.